Have you ever wondered what it actually takes to survive when nature literally strips away all your familiar landmarks? Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to break down a really gripping first-hand account of a solo adventure that went completely off the rails. We'll explore the absolutely crucial decisions and the deep psychological lessons learned from one terrifying night lost in the wild. Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to put yourself directly in the protagonist's shoes for just a second. Imagine you've set out alone for a hike in the jungle, just fueled by a simple passion for adventure. At first, everything's great. It's lush, it's vibrant, just a fantastic hike. But then, as our source material describes, the environment starts playing these massive tricks on your eyes. The trees are incredibly dense, and suddenly, literally every single direction looks completely identical. I mean, what do you do when every path in the jungle looks exactly the same? Our survivor tried so hard to backtrack, to retrace their steps, but the visual confusion was just severe. The further they went, the more entangled and turned around they got in this giant maze of greenery. And let's look at how incredibly fast a situation like this escalates. In the afternoon, the adventure begins with super high spirits. But by late afternoon, the paths blur together and disorientation fully sets in. Trying to turn back totally fails. By evening, our survivor makes a smart, albeit super desperate move. They start searching for high ground just to spot a way out. But time is slipping away fast, which brings us to dusk, and the realization hits them like a ton of bricks. There is absolutely no way they are making it out before nightfall. What started as a fun, leisurely hike has rapidly turned into a full-on race against the setting sun. There is this very specific, chilling detail in the source account that really stands out here. It's the fading sun. The protagonist describes the sun slowly, inevitably disappearing behind that dense canopy of trees. And when you're lost in a thick forest, the environment doesn't just gradually get dim, it plunges. The shadows stretch out, the temperature drops fast, and this deep, creeping dread just completely takes over as the entire jungle sinks into total darkness. So, the crucial point is, this is the exact moment where the vast majority of survival stories take a tragic turn. One option is just giving in to uncontrolled panic, right? Running blindly through the dark woods, which, let's be honest, is a fatal mistake. But our survivor recognized this danger and made a massive psychological pivot. Instead of succumbing to terror, they accepted their harsh reality and chose the alternative, methodically seeking a safe shelter. And wow, did that calculated decision to stop running and start looking pay off? After a really long, stressful search in that fading light, they made an incredible discovery. A massive, old tree stood out in the landscape. But it wasn't just its size that was a lifesaver. As our survivor got closer, they realized the immense trunk was completely hollow on the inside. It was literally nature's ready-made bunker, offering a vital shield from the elements and whatever else was out there in the unknown. But listen, finding the shelter is only half the battle. Preparing it is the other. Let's slow down for a second and really look at these exact tactical steps, because these are highly actionable survival skills. Step 1, they cleaned out the interior, sweeping away all of the dry leaves, twigs, and dirt, which is absolutely crucial to clear out insects or small pests. Step 2, they foraged for fresh, dry grass and leaves to lay down. This creates a critical insulating layer between their body and the freezing cold ground. And step 3, which is perhaps the most vital of all, they gathered thick branches and fully barricaded the entrance to the hollow. This ensured that no large wild animals could easily get inside while they were sleeping and vulnerable. And they finished securing that barricade just in the nick of time, because as true night finally falls, the jungle completely awakens. The source account describes this terrifying auditory shift. The familiar, kind of peaceful quiet of the daytime is instantly replaced by, a symphony of the unknown. Strange sounds begin echoing through the thick, dark air all around them. Just think about the stark contrast going on here. Outside the tree, you have absolute sensory overload. Loud, unrelenting crickets, rustling brush, and the unmistakable calls of distant wild animals prowling around in the pitch black. But inside the tree, it is barricaded, it is secure. And this brilliantly illustrates how physical preparation completely dictates your psychological state. Because they took the time to build that physical barricade, our survivor felt safe enough to let their sheer exhaustion take over. Despite the intense fear, they actually managed to fall asleep. Fast forward through those long, agonizing hours of darkness and just imagine the absolute relief of this next moment. Morning light finally pierces through a small hole in the hollow tree. Our survivor opens their eyes. They made it. The sun brings not just visibility, but this massive surge of renewed physical energy and mental clarity. They wake up feeling refreshed, having successfully survived their absolute most vulnerable hours. But of course, they're still lost, right? Surviving the night was just phase 1. Escaping is phase 2. Let's move to and see how this builds. Their next steps were incredibly methodical. Step outside. Carefully assess the daylight surroundings and, above all, stand perfectly still and just listen. They didn't just pick a random direction and blindly hope for the best. And listening intently yielded the exact clue that saved their life. Through all the ambient noise of the morning jungle, they isolated a critical auditory cue: the distinct, steady sound of flowing water coming from a very specific direction. Now, in any wilderness survival scenario, water is a literal lifeline, and not just for hydration, but for navigation. Think about it. Water almost always flows downward, joining larger streams, which eventually lead to rivers, and rivers almost always lead to human civilization. The decision was instantaneous. Our survivor tracked that sound. Following the water provided a linear, physical path through the otherwise totally chaotic and disorienting maze of identical trees. That flowing water acted as a natural compass. They just kept pushing forward along its banks until, finally, it led them right to the long-awaited path out of the dense jungle. They were free. Which brings us to the core message of this entire account, spoken directly by the survivor themselves. They said, "That day I learned that in difficult situations, instead of panicking, staying calm and making sensible decisions is true survival." Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it confirms something survival experts talk about all the time. Survival is rarely about physical strength. It is almost entirely a mental game. Emotional regulation, literally the ability to stop your brain from spiraling into a panic, is the exact thing that keeps you alive. This whole story is just a masterclass in overcoming adversity through structured, calm thinking. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you reflecting on your own psychological resilience. When your path disappears, whether that's literally getting lost in the wild or facing a sudden, disoriented crisis in your everyday life, what will your default reaction be? Will you give in to the darkness and panic, or will you pause, gather your bearings, and build your shelter?